Last night I had the privilege to speak at their parlor meeting in Kew Garden Hills in the home of Rabbi Krause. And I just want to share with you a brief thought, a story. I've said this story many times, but I think this story becomes very poignant, especially when we talk about the life-saving work that Chazak does here in the New York community, especially for the Bukharian community. My very dear friends, Rav Ilan, Rav Yaniv, they've informed me that in this immediate area, there are 10,000 Jewish boys and girls in the public schools. And when I heard that number, 10,000, I chaptet sitter. I shuddered when I heard that number, that there are 10,000 boys and girls. There's a story I said over many times, something that I read, an interview with Rabbi, who is a well-known Jewish personality, a very multifaceted, multi-talented personality. He was a Rav, he is a rabbi today, a Rosh Hashiva, a writer, a historian, a journalist, a producer. Well, he records that when he was 11 years old in 1946, he was an only child, and his father told him, Beryl, we're going to the airport. They lived in Chicago Midway Airport. So he asked his father, what's in the airport? So his father said, we're going to meet and greet a great tzaddik. Which tzaddik? Who are we going to greet? We're going to greet Rav Isaac Halevi Herzog, the first chief rabbi of Palestine. And the whole Skokie Yeshiva went out to greet him, all the Balabatim in the community, all the Yeshiva students. And Rav Herzog was a very aristocratic personality. He was a regal personality. He wore a top hat. He had a silver cane. He carried a Tanakh in his hands. And he lit from the plane. And they escorted him to the Skokie Yeshiva. And Rav Herzog gave a 45-minute shir, a pilpul shir in Yiddish. And when he finished his complex Talmudic discussion, he turns to the Bachrim, the young Torah students in the audience, and he says, now I would like to have a word with the students. And he says, you know where I just came from? I just came back from Rome, where I had a private audience with Pope Pius XII. And I had with me the names of 10,000 boys and girls who were given over during the war to monasteries, to Christian families, to Christian couples, by Jews who didn't know what would be with their children. They didn't think they would survive, and they felt the only way to save their children would be to give them over to these Christian families. And he turns to the Pope, he says, I have the first and last name of all these 10,000 children. They're our children. You've kidnapped them. We only gave them to you because we didn't think we would survive. But we're here now. We want our children back. And the Pope looks Rav Herzog in the eye, and he says, Rabbi, I will not give back even one child. The law is that once a child is baptized, he can never be returned to another religion. These 10,000 children have all been baptized. We will not give back even one of them. And Rav Herzog was asked to leave, and the door was slammed in his face. And I read this account, and to me this is not only a story, because my grandfather told me, and he records in his personal memoirs, that he met Rav Herzog in the DP camps right after the war. And Rav Herzog told him that during the Holocaust, he went to the Vatican to plead with the Pope to shut down the gas chambers and the crematoria. And after the war, Rav Herzog went to the Pope asking to return these Jewish children, and he refused. And Rav Herzog is standing there at the podium, and he breaks down crying like a baby. And after a few moments, the tzaddik rears his head, and his face is beet red, and he raises his head like a lion, and he roars. He says, there's nothing I could do to save these 10,000 children. But what will you do for the future of the Jewish people? What will you do for the children of the Jewish people? And then Rabbi Wein says we all lined up to greet Rav Herzog, and he shook each one of our hands, and he turns to us and he says, don't forget what I told you. Never forget the message. What will you do for the children, for the future of the Jewish people? And Rabbi Wein recounts that if ever he's tired or he wants to throw in the towel, he's haunted by the words of Rav Herzog. What will you do for the future of the Jewish people? Ladies and gentlemen, just want to share with you, could you imagine if in 1946 these children were up for sale? If we could have paid a few bucks to redeem these children? Can you imagine if money could have bought these children back? If we had those 10,000 children back today, we would have millions and millions of more Jews in the world. But in 1946, these children were not for sale. But Rav Ilan, Rabbi Yaniv have told me that in this immediate area there are 10,000 boys and girls in the public school. The assimilation rate in the United States of America is alarming. 7 out of every 10 weddings of Jewish people in this country are intermarriage. More people have disappeared in the spiritual Holocaust in America than have been destroyed in between 1939 and 1945. Today we have a new list of 10,000 boys and girls. But the difference is today these boys and girls are for sale. Today all we need is money. And with a few bucks, these boys and girls could be registered in yeshiva, they could get a Jewish education, their Jewish identity will be restored, they could be infused with feelings of kedusha and dedication to the Torah and the Jewish people. Today, these boys and girls are for sale. They're available. It's within our ability. All we need is, I beg you, if there's any mitzvah to participate in, it's the mitzvah of saving Hatzalas Nefashos Kol HaMatzil Nefesh Achas MiYisrael Ki'ilu Kiyem Olam Malei. It gives me great pride to be able to participate in this campaign for Chazak. There is no greater mitzvah than to save the spiritual life of the children of Klal Yisrael. We are all looking for the merit, for the zechut, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give us all nachas from our own children. What could be a bigger mitzvah than to help out the children of the Ribbon Shalom, and then measure for measure, God will give us tremendous nachas from our own children. Ad Bias Koel Tzedek, we should all merit to see the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash from Her V'Yameinu.